My. Have you ever wondered when you hear on the news about the black leaders in politics and communities and such, the black leaders, or some would say African American, if you know all that kind of stuff, the black leaders, where do they come from? Where do they come from? Are they elected? Are they appointed? If they're appointed, who appoints them? At any rate, let's get into it.
Disagree with that.
Okay, Cole, say why you disagree.
She was placed in that position.
That's possible. That is possible. I don't argue with that. I look at a lot of these people. I ask people all the time, especially black friends of mine and such, when subjects like this come up, I ask them, who is it when someone says such and so is a black leader? Who made that decision?
All right, this is an excerpt here from an appearance I did on the Vulcan Soapbox a few months ago, so it's a little old. I'm a little late getting it out. Well, what can I say? I'm old and I'm fat and I'm getting around to it, okay? But it's the Vulcan Soapbox. They haven't actually put an episode out here in the last week or so, but we'll be back on there pretty soon. But I enjoy being on there. But anyway, I am Dane Big Daddy Snyder, and from the Big Daddy Pod. So if you hadn't subscribed yet, I don't know why not. Go subscribe, like my video, and do like Anita Ward said back in the 70s and ring that bell, okay?
I've never heard of black people getting ballots in the mail to vote on who their leader's going to be. And they never say that about white people, Jewish people, Native Americans. They never say, this guy's a Native American leader.
Who would you say? I mean, who would you say if you had to pick a leader of the white community in the United States? Who would that be? I can't think of one. And, well, I guess you could go back to the days of David Duke and, Robert Byrd and them, two of the former Grand Wizards of the Ku Klux Klan. See, that's what comes up when you think of leaders or political heads who speak for the interest of white people. But by and large, white people don't have political leaders. But somebody somewhere along the line decided that black people, the black Americans, that they needed some unified person or handful of people to be black leaders.
Don't say that. They don't say Benjamin Netanyahu or any of those people are Jewish people's leaders, but they'll say with the black community, Jesse Jackson.
Here's going to come a guy. He could not just take my argument here, which is correct. It is correct. The truth of the truth of the matter, which you won't hear anybody trying to contradict me here, tell you this. They won't admit it. They actually defend this. But those quote unquote black leaders in this country, they are appointed, they're chosen, they're vetted out, and they're presented to the country in the media. They're presented to them by white liberals. More often than not, white liberal women. And why this guy can't just concede that point, I don't know.
Damn, that's a really good point. Aki, you had something you wanted to say?
Yes. White people don't have to tell us who their leaders are because we see who they are. They don't have to be announced. The white is always silent.
Do you hear that? Okay. On a lot of my video content, you'll hear me refer to the feminine mind. Feminine mindset, feminine thinking, feminine communication, feminine understanding. And I get a lot of pushback or, whatever, but I don't care. But I get a lot of that from people and they say, well, you just call anything you disagree with or you don't like, you just call it feminine. The only way that could be the case is if being feminine was inherently a negative thing, inherently insulting. It's not. When femininity is in its proper place, it's a very good thing. It's a very natural thing. It's a very needed thing. But for the most part, women will communicate. They communicate like this because they understand their reality like this in a way like this guy right here. Aki is his name. He has a stream on YouTube as well. You can see what is that, Good and Crazy News, Aki Good and Crazy News. You can go check him out. Most of his Good and Crazy News amounts to a lot of kind of sassy stuff about pop culture, celebrities and musicians and all of that sort of stuff. But if that interests you, go check him out. I'm sure he would appreciate the subscription and that sort of stuff. At any rate, so the feminine mind this guy displays perfectly. How do I mean? I mean because he begins his point by speaking of himself in the plural. We don't need this. We don't need to ask that. And that's because the feminine mind, the female, is a social creature. And for the most part, not all women, not all, but most, perceive of themselves. When they think of themselves, they don't think of themselves as one lone individual. They think of themselves as a part of a group, a part of a gathering, a friend group, a social group, whatever the case may be. And then they'll go to, instead of responding to a question or some sort of a challenge, as saying, I think, I think this, I think that, I need this, I need that, I want this, I want that. They'll say we or us. Sometimes it's us. Let us know. They'll speak for the whole group. Or, we don't need to ask who the white leader is because we all see it. Okay? On a logical sense and reality, how in the heck can this guy right here speak for we, black people, or we, the whole culture, the whole society? He can't. But he thinks and understands and communicates from a feminine perspective as a we. And then he works in something else that the feminine mind is well known for because they understand themselves in reality in like a very poetic way. It's often been said, and it's true for the most part, that women have much larger vocabularies than most men. Not me. I'm not one of them. I have a fairly extensive vocabulary, believe it or not. But it is true that most women have much larger vocabularies than most men. And so because of that, words are very important for them. So they do what I call woman poetry, where they will create these phrases that the rhythm will be real consistent in them and the words will flow very well and they feel really good when it comes over their tongue. And because they have all those emotional feelings as they say it, they seem to think it makes it true. And he just did the same thing right here when he said, we don't need to ask because we already see it. It sounds almost like he's made an argument. It sounds almost like he's actually refuted what I've said or issued some sort of a challenge to my argument. He hasn't. All he did was just said some words with an implication, but he hasn't actually explained what it is he's seen. We've already seen it, when in fact, he hasn't seen anything.
Okay. And I want to bring up another point here. I don't know, Dave, your name is Dave, right?
Dane, like Great Dane, like the dog
Dane.
breed.
Dave, how do you identify racially? It's just a question. I'm not being ambiguous or anything.
I don't know what word he was looking for, but he used the word ambiguous. I mean, he kind of stubbed his toe right there when it comes to that feminine mindset because women are supposed to be very good with words and vocabulary. I don't know what he meant when he said he wasn't being ambiguous. I mean, I understood what he was asking. It didn't seem ambiguous to me at all. I don't know what word he was looking for.
Dang.
I'm Scotch-Irish.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
Well,
it's not really.
I think that you probably need to read this book, The Miseducation of the Negro, because Carter.
Do you see that? I mean, I think the guy he just could not wait to offer me that book. Now, understand what he just said. Okay, I'm going to back that up just a little bit. See if I can get that in there.
And I want to bring up another point here. I don't know, Dave, your name is Dave, right?
Dane, like Great Dane, like the dog
Dane.
breed.
Dave, how do you identify racially? It's just a question. I'm not being ambiguous or anything.
I'm Scotch-Irish.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
Well,
it's not really.
I think that you probably need to read this book, The Miseducation of the Negro, because Carter G. Woodson breaks down all of your misguided information you've been given tonight about Black people.
So in other words, instead of engaging with my argument and dispelling it with logic, you just gonna basically imply that I'm just uneducated and too stupid to know the truth? Come on, man.
All right. See, the situation is men live under the constant threat of violence. This is just a fact. It's not something I've made up. This is just the truth. We live under the constant threat of violence. But that constant threat of violence from other men restrains our violent urges that are within ourselves. And that's how we keep peace and order in society. I can be just as crazy or as loud, as aggressive physically or verbally as I am willing to have returned to me. See? So if I have the urge to go punch some guy in the mouth, I have to understand that the reciprocal is likely, or it's at least possible. So then I have to ask myself, do I want to punch that guy in the mouth? And then that governs that. Same thing with stuff that I would say to another man. I can be just as aggressive or insulting or whatever the case may be to another man as I am willing to have him come back at me. But I have the understanding that if words begin to fail each other, that could go to a physical level. Women don't primarily have that. When women get into a physical, violent confrontation, for the most part, again, not all, but most of them, what do? They grab one another's hair and they start calling each other vulgar names, usually the B word, right? So, and that's about it, because women lack the physicality to be physically violent like men have. So they have to resort to being violent with their mouths by use of shame, insult, guilt, character assassinations, peer pressure, social scorn, incredulity, that sort of stuff. That's what this guy Aki is trying to pull right here for me.
He's giving you a route to take.
I didn't say that.
He's giving you a route to take.
Why do I need a route to take? Why do I need a route to take if I'm not lost? That's still an implication that I'm just lost. Bless his little fat bud. He just don't know no better. Here's a book to read. Why not engage with my argument? Read this book. It's not an argument.
So does anybody think that they could refute?
Well, when somebody say read a book, it means that they don't have the time to break down every single chapter in that book to you over.
And that right there is what you would call a straw man argument. Nobody asked for him to break down every book in every chapter in the book for me. It would seem that if he understood what the book had to say, that the guy would be able to come back at me. All right, this guy right here, I'll pop him back up. This dude right here, he's another guy who's on the panel pretty regularly. He goes by the name T Reason. Why some of these people use these pseudonyms like they're 1970s truck drivers in the CB handles, I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm just ignorant to, but I go by my name online. But he goes by T Reason. He too is a feminine thinking man. He's a feminized, he has feminine understanding, feminine thinking, feminine argumentation. So what you've just seen here, if you pay attention to the way your social situations work many times, what he's done is he's seen the other feminine thinking man be challenged, and he sees the other feminine thinking man, Aki over there. He sees that he's losing ground, he's losing bad, he's got himself painted into a corner because Big Daddy is destroying his claims. So what does this do? He steps up to take care of one of the girls. It's like women will do that. I call it the sister academy. It's like they have a language, a telepathic language between themselves. So the sister academy exists in some males now. And I don't mean the LBGT thing. I'm talking about the way they think and understand and communicate and those sorts of things. And that's what T Reason is doing here. He's coming on in there to try to defend and rescue his girl.
Well, then why not engage
with the argument?
Engage with the argument. Read a book does not engage with an argument. It's an implication that I'm uneducated. If I'm uneducated, it should be easy for him.
And you see, a lot of people do that because they don't understand logic. He can't refute my argument. So what he'd rather come back with is to try to just say, oh, Dane, well, you're just too dumb to understand. And what Aki has smuggled in there beyond even the you're too dumb to understand what you're talking about, Dane, it's the same thing that women and other people who are pro-abortion, pro-choice, whatever they want to call it, when they say to a man that when you have a uterus, then you can have an opinion on abortion. That is what Aki, in a roundabout way, is saying in his bull crap with his book that he wanted to offer me to read, is that because I'm not black, like not having a uterus, not having an opinion on abortion, he's saying that I can't have an opinion on anything having to do with the black community, which is the total bull crap.
Mount a moral, objective argument.
That's an opinion. That's not a fact. That's an opinion you have.
That is another response that is very common in the feminine mind. That's an opinion. That's an opinion. Oh, that's just an opinion. Everything's an opinion. Everything is an opinion. any assertion a person makes is an opinion, but then the step of the logician to do once he's presented that opinion is to then present an argument to defend whether or not his opinion is correct. So for him to say, well, that's an opinion, that's a bullcrap.
Hold on real
That's
quick.
logic, brother.
Hold on, Dave, real quick, because I don't want to get into the metacognition. And just for the audience out there, there's the conversation that we're having, then there's a conversation about the conversation, which may be necessary at times. Don't get me wrong, but I think we've got both sides of it. Dane's made his point. T-Reason made his point as far as that goes. Aki, do you want to engage with what he said specifically, or you feel like within the time constraints that's not going to be good enough?
What do y'all think he's going to say? Now, that voice that you hear going on that interrupted T-Reason and myself in the background, I don't have his camera up here. That's Vulcan. It's his podcast, Vulcan Soapbox. It's his podcast. And so he kind of tries to keep it moderated down a little bit to keep it moving forward. So he returns to this Aki guy who obviously has an opinion about what I said way back when I was asking who it is that appoints or where these black leaders come from in the culture. He obviously has something he wants to say, but he won't say it. So instead of attacking my argument head on or in any way, for that matter, what does he do? He offers me this book. So he's basically saying, dang, you're just too stupid for this conversation. James brought it back and says, Aki, do you have anything you want to add to this? What do you think he said? What do you think?
No, it's too broad. The book is required reading for
I don't have time or desire to even have this argument.
African Americans in black cities in high school and definitely in college.
See, he thinks that because, see what he said, it's required reading for black students. He says African Americans. Where does that term come from in modern America? Jesse Jackson, 1988, when he announced his presidential candidacy campaign for the U.S. presidency, that's when he began to promote African Americans instead of saying black people. So here he is picking up on, practicing what Jesse Jackson has taught his generation of black people that they are. Jesse Jackson, one of these self-appointed or liberal-appointed, state-appointed black leaders, told him that he's African American, so he's making sure to use that phraseology, African American. And so his claim is that because it's required reading for black students and such, required by whom? See, this mindset it's that feminine mindset that just assumes that there's going to be someone in authority over them for the rest of their lives. You see, it's required reading. Required by whom? That question's never answered. That was the question that I was trying to bring up when he decided he wanted to interrupt and I don't know, show out. So required reading, as if that means that the book is correct or true. Logic is so difficult for some people.
But as far as right now, you wouldn't want to engage with what he was talking
Of course he wouldn't.
about.
No, it's too deep. I just actually read the book for the third time.
You would think, now, I may be being unreasonable here, but you would think that if he has read the book, just finished reading the book for the third time, that he would be able to use the contents of the book that he's recommended to me to mount an argument to refute my claim about black leaders being appointed through some nefarious, unknown, undemocratic means. I mean, if he's read it 3 times, you'd think he'd have enough of it on top of his mind to be able to defend his claims.
And Carter G. Woodson is somebody you need to know about. And
Real quickly, I appreciate you plugging the book right there. That's a very common book. Man on the Street. We go ahead, Man on the Street.
At any rate, so I could go on forever. I'll make some more shorts on this, and maybe I'll do a live about this coming week. But again, I'm Dane Snyder, Big Daddy Snyder, and be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, share it for me, ring that bell so you get a notification. So when I go live, and I'm going to be doing more and more of that, so get ready for it. When I go live, you'll get a notification, and I'll be happy to see you there.